Hi, in today's video I'm going to take you with me on my 15th visit to the National Park Plitvice Lake. I visited the park first time in 2006 or 7 and I've been there on all 4 seasons, and the park simply keeps amazing me, which is why I keep going back there with my family. This year we did something new. We tried to stay in one of the National Park's official hotels. I'll explain you a bit more why we did that later on in the video. Let's get started on our tour around Plitvice Lake National Park. From the hotel we had about 2-3 minutes walk to get down to entrance 2, the place basically where you have to show your ticket to actually enter the park. And as you can see here, there was already a line of people waiting, but one of the perks of staying at the hotel is you could just basically pass by the line and walk directly into the park. And after showing our ticket and entering the park, we basically had another 5-10 minutes walk to get down to the first lake. While we are walking down here, I will just briefly explain what you need to consider when you are planning a visit to Plitvice Lakes. First of all, there are 2 main entrances to Plitvice, and they are named something as sophisticated as Entrance 1 and Entrance 2. At each entrance, there's a limitation on how many people can enter per hour. And what does this mean? This basically means that, especially in the main season, the morning slots will be sold out days, maybe even weeks ahead. So if you want to visit the national park during the summer season, early in the morning, there's only one way to go about this. This is basically planning ahead and make sure to buy your tickets online days ahead. And I would recommend you just buy the ticket directly at the website of the National Park. So the tickets, basically, as I said, they are valid for a time slot, or basically an hourly time slot. But there's a grace period of an hour, so if you are up to 1 hour late, you will also be admitted to the park. If you come earlier, you basically have to wait until you are at the time slot, the slot you booked for. Another thing maybe to know, because there's lots of people who just show up without ticket, they will probably be standing in line and waiting for them to be able to buy the ticket. You could just go around that and go down to the place where they would scan the ticket and enter, because you have a valid ticket for the specific time slot. Another part of the planning process for visiting Plitvice Lakes is to figure out how much time you would like to spend there and how much you are willing to walk. At the website of the National Park, you have a list of 7 walking tours with various length and duration. Also at each entrance you have an information board like this one, where you can see the walking program available from the entrance you are at. We will link to the information on the website of the National Park, so you can check all tours or walking programs out before you visit the park. The walking programs ranges from 2 to 3 hours and 3.5 kilometers to 6 to 8 hours and 18 kilometers. The board for the A tour program you can see here. It is the shortest walking program from entrance 1. The K program, as you can see here, is the longest walking program available, and this is the one we are following today. We didn't manage to do the whole tour, but most of it, so we walked somewhere around 12 to 15 kilometers today. And navigating around the park is super easy, as you maybe noticed a little bit earlier in the video. You have boards like this one you see on the screen now, which basically guides you which direction to take if you're following a specific program. It also shows you which way to go if you want to go take the boats, or you want to go where the train/bus is departing. When you start early in the morning and walk from entrance 2 towards entrance 1, you can enjoy views or sights like this, completely quiet lake, no people around, but I guarantee you that's going to change a little bit later. But the animals out, they are probably also enjoying that it's still quiet. At the entrance you can get a map like the one I'm holding here. This is always good to bring, just in case if you have family members who doesn't trust your guidance. So what about food and drinks? Well, basically you can buy food and drinks in several places inside the national park. It is not too overpriced, but be aware that the two most popular places, the P3, where you are basically taking the boat over the large lake, and the area they call S3, where you are waiting for the panoramic train. In those two areas you have large lines and big crowds, especially during the summer months, so it could take a while to get some food in those places. We usually always bring backpacks with pre-made sandwiches and drinks, so we don't have to waste time standing in line buying food somewhere. As you can see on the sign here, we are still on the right track, following the route K around the park, and we are now slowly getting up to the area called S1, which is basically station number 1 for the panoramic train. Most people basically walk opposite way around the park as we are doing today, which is why we have way less people walking here, but you will see a bit later that there's a lot of people in the park, and there was a lot of people in the park together with us. Here's one more time the sign, clearly marked. This is basically a turning point for the train, so you can jump on the train here, go to station 2 or to station 3. Just maybe if you're traveling with kids, you might get a bit tired from all the walking. You can't drive directly to entrance number 1. The closest you can get is basically this station 1, but from here on you still have probably around 20 minutes walk until you are at entrance 1. So just keep that in mind if the kids are a bit tired. When you're visiting Plitvice Lakes as a guest, there are certain rules you need to comply to. As you probably know, the park is part of UNESCO's World Heritage Site, so it's very important that the park is protected, and which means as a visitor there's a set of rules of conduct which the park has set out, and basically you're expected to comply to them. The most important rules are, of course, that you need to avoid damaging trees, picking plants, disturbing or feeding the animal, and other things which could harm the environment. Additionally, it's also important that you stay on the marked trails and do not run around outside those. And of course, the obvious ones, you are not allowed to light a fire, and you are also not allowed to camp inside the national park. The two most common questions people ask me before they visit is whether they are allowed to bring their dog and if they are allowed to swim at the lakes. The answer to the first question is yes, you are basically allowed to bring your dog as long as it's on a leash and comfortable in crowds. In relation to swimming, the answer is no, it is not allowed. One rule which amuses me a bit when I read it on the website is that it says that remotely controlled aircrafts for filming from the air are banned. I think the guy who did the signage in the park found a way simpler way of conveying this message. Before you visit National Park Plitvice Lakes, here are some facts that you probably should know. So the National Park is located in the county called Liga, which is 275 kilometers from Split and a little bit less than 140 kilometers from Zagreb, and only 10 kilometers, roughly 10 kilometers from the border to Bosnia and Herzegovina. The area is basically one big La Liga in general. La Liga County is one of the counties in Croatia with the most forests, so not only the national park is a beautiful place in terms of nature, but the whole region offers basically lots of opportunities for hiking, walking, bike riding, and other nature activities. Before we continue with the facts about Plitvice, you can now see on the signs that we are getting very close to the to entrance 1. So basically we walk from entrance 2 to entrance 1. And the place we are getting up to now is basically the most popular viewing point which you will find inside the national park, and that one is located just where you enter at entrance 1. And here there's usually always a lot of people gathered. For some unknown reason, there was not that many people near entrance 1 when I arrived there. Maybe it was because we were still quite early, or for some other reason, have no idea what happened. But definitely later during the day there was plenty of people in the park, so maybe it was just coincidence. Anyway, you can see the footage here. From the viewing point, there's of course an obvious reason why people like to stop here and take photos of the main waterfall, Velika Slapa. From the main viewing point, we will continue down to the first lake, and while we are doing that, I will continue giving you the facts about National Park Plitvice, so that you're ready for your visit. The park itself, the protected area, is basically a little bit less than 280 square kilometers. And the area you would basically see as a regular visitor to the national park is just a fraction of the total area covered by the park. The main touristic area for visitors basically has 16 lakes, which are all terraced from a altitude of 640 meter down to about 500 meter. That's basically why you have all the waterfalls. The lowest lake basically flows into the Korana River, which is a river which is about 140 kilometers long, and the river continues from Plitvice to the city of Karlovac. Plitvice has basically been on the UNESCO World Heritage List since 1979, which is one of the reasons why there's quite strict rules, for instance, in relation to how many visitors the park allows in per hour and other things. Every year there's about 1.5 million people visiting the national park. As I mentioned earlier, there are two main entrances and a third smaller entrance to the park. At the two main entrances you have a large parking area nearby, and at the entrance you can find souvenir shop, kiosk, some food places, an information office, and even luggage storage. Plitvice is of course a fantastic nature place, and not only to look at but also for the wildlife. It's an amazing place. There's a total of over 250 species in the area. Some you do not necessarily like to meet during your visit, and here I'm talking about the brown bear or the wolf, lynx, or various types of snakes, but don't worry, this happens almost never, at least I've never heard about it. We finally made it down to the lake. As you probably noticed, the path walking down was paved, and now, as you see, basically we are walking on wooden trail, and that's basically a thing to keep in mind. Depending on where you are in the park, it might vary. Some places you have the stone, some places, most places I would say you have the wooden planks to walk on, but there's also areas where you just have dirt or dirt roads, so it all varies, so you need to think about that when you pick your footwear, and if you're visiting in the winter, it can be very slippy, so also consider that. As you can hear in the background, the sound of waterfalls get more and more evident, and the reason for that is, of course, now we are getting close to Velika Slap, the main waterfall, and basically when you walk down to that one, there's a lot of waterfalls on your right side, basically where you would see I'm walking, and as you can also see, the path is relatively narrow and there's quite a few people walking here, so I'm wondering if it's if somebody managed to fall in the lake here at this area. When you arrive at Velika Slap, which literally means the large waterfall, you usually always have lots of people gathered, because this is of course a photo opportunity which nobody wants to miss. So after seeing Velika Slap, we basically are continuing our trip towards P3, which is where we can take the boat over the big lake. And as you maybe recall, I mentioned earlier in the video, we are today following a route, predefined route called the K route, which is 6 to 8 hours walking within the national park. And here on the map, you can basically see till now we went from entrance 2 down to the Velika Slap waterfall, and now we are basically following the path along the lakes till we get up to P3, where we will take the boat. So while we are walking towards P3, I will explain you a bit about the pricing structure, and I will also blend it in here on the screen so that you are aware what cost you would have when visiting the national park. In the period from 1st of June to 30th of September, which is what they call the main season, an adult ticket costs €40. In the shoulder season, which is April, May and October, it costs €23. And the rest of the year, €10. There's of course some discounts available for students, children between 7 and 18. And for children less than 7, I think entrance is even free. Other discounted tickets are available for groups which announce their arrival, I think 2 or 3 days prior at the national park. So this is kind of the options you have. The entrance tickets of course include walking around in the park, and it also includes all the rides with the boats, no matter if you take multiple rides, and the same goes for the panoramic trains between the different stations inside. That one you can also use as much as you want. One important thing to know is that tickets occasionally are checked inside the park, basically by rangers. So make sure to keep your ticket on you, otherwise you will basically have to get a fine or something like that. If you're larger groups, you can hire a guide from the national park. So in that case, you will basically have to contact the sales office of the national park and arrange this prior to your arrival. Also, in terms of prices, remember you will also have costs for parking and of course food and drinks unless you bring some yourself. A typical question I get regarding visiting Plitvice Lakes National Park is whether you have to stay overnight near the park, or you basically can visit the park as a day trip from various locations in Croatia. And I think basically both is perfectly fine and possible. Of course, if you choose to drive there from a bit further away locations like Istria or Split or further south, it's gonna be a quite long day for you, but definitely manageable. So why do we always stay overnight when we're near Plitvice? Well, we basically started out doing so when we had the first visits back in 2007 or something like that, and we kind of always found some great places and really liked staying in the area because of the beautiful nature and just for having some family time. So we more or less has kept that a tradition. Every time we go to Plitvice Lakes, we always find somewhere in the area where we can stay for 1 or 2 days. And we really have found some amazing places. One which particularly jumps to my mind is when we stayed in something called San Corana. I will basically add a link so you can basically check out the place. This was a place just 5 kilometers south of Plitvice Lakes, situated next to the river with a small waterfalls under the house. Really amazing. So this is definitely my top recommendation if you want to grab an apartment in the area, but you need a car if you want to go there, just for information. I will continue the information about staying at Plitvice a bit later in the video, because now we have arrived at P3, which is the location where you board the boat which sails you across the Lake Košak. And in this area you probably, or you for sure, will have to wait, because as you will see, there's quite a long line when you need to board the boat, and I think this happens any day during the summer season. So unless you are very, very early in the park, you will have to wait in this area. But good thing is, this place is probably the best place for having lunch. One of the best places for having lunch at Plitvice. There's plenty of options in terms of food, and there's lots of tables and chairs, so you can definitely find a place to sit. Of course, on warm summer days, there's not too much shade, so make sure to bring sun cream and maybe a cap or something like that to protect you against yourselves against the sun. The boats used for crossing Lake Košak are of course electrical boats, and it has been like that since 1977. Prior to that, basically crossing was done in rowing boats, wooden rowing boats, and you can still, they still have these rowing boats available for rent. I think it's at P1. So if you feel like crossing the boat on your own, you're welcome to do so. Plitvice National Park in general pays a lot of attention to sustainability, and since 2003 it has been the holder of Green Destination Award for sustainability. And reason for that is of course that everything, for instance, every vessel or vehicle which is used inside the park is electric or as a minimum hybrid, and also the power used or consumed by the park is obtained from renewable sources, and these are kind of the things the national park management really pay attention to and make sure that everything is done according to sustainable guidelines. During the crossing with the boat, I will explain you the remaining parts regarding staying at Plitvice. If you're not into apartments, but more like to stay, for instance, at a campsite, you have 4 of them near Plitvice Lakes, and 2 of them, Camping Cordana and Camping Bordia, they're actually operated by the national park, which makes it a bit easier because they actually have a bus between these 2 camps and the national park, so you don't need to worry about how to get to the park from your accommodation if you didn't bring a car. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I promised to explain why we decided to stay at one of the park's hotel this time. Well, the main reason was that we were visiting here in the peak season, and we actually had a last-minute planning because we had a few days available, and the only way basically to get in early morning was to book the hotel because all early morning tickets were already sold out. So one of the perks when you book the hotel is basically one of the hotels which belongs to the national park is that you can enter anytime you want at the checkout day. The hotel also was pretty good, but of course it was relatively expensive. I think we paid around 550 euro for 4 people, which of course included the entrance ticket and offered us free parking. But still, it could definitely have been done cheaper if we would have picked an apartment somewhere near. But at the boat at P2, from P2 you basically have a walking path, which we are going to follow towards S3, which is basically the top part of the national park. But if you are on one of the shorter trips, you basically from P2 have also a boat taking you to P1, which is basically near entrance 2. So if you want to exit the park there, you can do so. The walking at now is called the Upper Lakes. And this part is less visited, at least the walking path that we are following is not so crowded because most people basically take the boats and the train to get around and do not walk all the way around the park, but there is still some people, as you can see on the footage. So while we walk here from P2 toward S3, I thought I might want to tell you a little bit about getting to Plitvice, so that you can consider what would be the best option for you. The easiest and fastest way of getting to Plitvice is, of course, to drive there by car. And you can basically do so from any place in Croatia. The roads are quite good, so driving is definitely not a problem. The cheapest way of getting to Plitvice National Park is to take the public buses, which runs here. You have buses all year round from cities like Zagreb, Split and Zadar. The number of daily departures, of course, depends on the time of the year you're traveling. But if you check out websites like getbybus.com, you will be able to see the current timetable or the timetable also for any future dates. So it's pretty easy to plan. The bus stops basically stops on the main road just outside the national park, and there's a bus stop at entrance 1 and entrance 2. So basically when you get here by bus, it's very, very easy to get to the entrances. The most convenient way probably of traveling to the national park is to join an organized tour. From lots of cities in Croatia, you have organized tour with guide or without guide, and various combination tours where you see Plitvice and, for instance, Rastoke in one day, or whatever would be suitable from the city you leave from. So this is definitely something consider, but keep in mind the organized tour option is usually quite a bit more expensive than if you do a self-catering tour, taking the bus directly to Plitvice. Train option, I'm often asked about if you can take the train to Plitvice, and that's basically not an option because the nearest railway station is 10 kilometers or more away, and basically I think most of the trains simply pass the station, nobody stops there. Also, what is good to know in relation to transportation is if you go to Plitvice and choose to stay overnight, you need to get from the national park to your accommodation. This can be a bit tricky because there's no Visi, Uber or Bolt in the area of Plitvice, so the only option is in most cases regular taxis, and they are not super cheap. When to visit Plitvice Lakes? Having visited Plitvice Lake at all 4 seasons, I can say for sure that the place looks amazing no matter when you visit. If you would hold me at gunpoint and I had to pick one of the 4 seasons, I would probably say that autumn is the most beautiful. But it's really hard to determine. It basically looks amazing no matter when you visit. For me, basically what I look at when I plan a trip to Plitvice is maybe to go there when there's not too many crowds, which basically means I prefer to go there on less busy days. So if you can pick a Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, it's probably better than going a Monday, Tuesday. And also I like to go there early in the morning, usually somewhere around 8 to 9 a.m. because then it's not too crowded, at least at the beginning. As soon as you get around noon, there would always be a lot of people at the park. Anyway, please check out our website. We have made a list of what you need to bring depending on the 4 seasons and other recommendations which relates to the time of the year where you're visiting. Regardless of when you're visiting Plitvice Lakes, you might want to consider combining your visit with other activities in the area, and there's definitely plenty of options. If you're doing a day trip to Plitvice Lakes, I would highly recommend that you combine it with a visit to Rastoke, which is 20 kilometers north of Plitvice. Charming little town built on 20-something waterfalls, so definitely something to see when you're in the area. If you are staying overnight near Plitvice, you have a lot more option. You should of course still include a visit to Rastoke, but there's also other activities. For instance, if you're into adrenaline, there's something called Plitvice Adrenaline Park. Here you have the option to try out a 300-meter long zip line, which basically makes you cross the river Corana with a speed of 70 kilometers per hour. So only for the people with strong nerves. Another adrenaline activity in the area is that there are several companies doing quad and boogie tours. Some goes into the forest and basically are more nature tours. And you also have inspirational tours, which visits older historical places in the area and an abandoned airport, which is located near Plitvice. So definitely also something to try out. If you're with kids, maybe the most popular pick would be the mini zoo at the ranch Dolina Jelena, which is about 15-20 kilometers from the national park. Here they have a lot of deer and other animals, super popular among kids. And if you are visiting on a very hot summer day, you might want to cool off a little bit. So the best pick on such a day would be the Barrack Caves, where you basically would be able to walk around in temperatures around 9 degrees. So remember to bring some extra clothes if you decide to add a visit to the caves when you are at Plitvice. And last but not least, for anybody who loves being in the nature, there's of course plenty of options for doing hiking and bicycling in the area. There's marked trails all around. You can obtain maps from tourist board and from other places, so definitely not a problem if you're into that. On my website I will basically make a complete list, so just go and check it out, and then you can simply see everything you can do in the area near Plitvice Lakes. So now we are almost finished with our tour around National Park Plitvice Lakes. Hope you enjoyed walking around with us and seeing the diversity of the park. It's not only the big waterfall, basically Plitvice Lakes has a lot of other stuff to offer, and as you can see, it requires a bit of walking if you want to take the last trip around like we did, the K trip, but it's definitely doable. So, and I would highly recommend it if you feel like walking a lot. As you can see now, we are getting up to the area where there's much more people. This is station 3, and as you will see, we are now getting on the train. So basically from my side, there's only to say thank you for watching, and I hope you will basically check out some of our other videos. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. That's basically it. Till the next one. Bye.